Hey friends, I'm Marc Schelske, and this is the Apprenticeship Way, a podcast about spiritual growth following the way of Jesus. This is episode 55, A Better Place Than Here. Today's podcast is made possible by the Writer's Advance. I'm a writer. I love supporting writers. 5 years ago, I created the Writer's Advance. It's exactly what I needed, a writing weekend that has been crafted to be precisely what writers need to push forward their current project. It's not about networking or listening to experts speak or trying desperately to get an agent or editor to notice you. No, it's about writing and reconnecting with why writing matters to you. At the end of every writing weekend, I send all the participants an anonymous survey to get feedback so that I can improve the experience. You can read their words on the event website, but I wanted to just read a couple of their comments to you right now because they really tell the story. This is an anonymous feedback from the retreat 2 years ago. This was an amazing weekend. The hosting was on target, the venue was peaceful, and offered more than I expected. I loved the pacing. Marc is a great host and guide and provides just the right amount of encouragement and accountability. So looking forward to the next one. Here's another. This is a comment about last year's event. This weekend re-energized my commitment to my writing craft. It was an excellent blend of accountability, flexibility, creativity, and guidance. I felt supported as a human and a writer the whole time I was there. One last one. This is from Tara Ralstad, a professional speaker who's attended the Writer's Advance multiple times. Now, she won't be there this November because she is going to be busy launching her new book, a book that came to life at the Writer's Advance. This is what she said. I've come to see Writer's Advance as a gift I can't afford not to give myself. I got more work done this weekend than I have in months, and to do it in a gorgeous, peaceful, comfortable location in the company and support of smart, quality people, invaluable. I'm deeply grateful. Maybe that is the sort of thing you need. Or maybe you love a writer and want to give them an incredible gift. Well, the next Writer's Advance is just around the corner, November 7 to 10, and registration closes on October 5th. So, I would love to see you there and support you and your project. All your questions are answered on the website. What are the accommodations like? How much does it cost? What's the food like? And can they handle special dietary needs? Yes, they absolutely can. All that's at www.thewritersadvance.com for more details. I hope to see you there. In the late 90s, I was a fresh-faced youth pastor with a guitar, doing all the things that line of work requires: youth group events and silly games and small group meetings at Denny's and leading energetic songs with hand motions, planning summer camps, and passionately preaching the gospel, all with the hope that kids might have an encounter with Jesus. And I remember in 1998, an album came onto the Christian music scene that just captured my mind. It was called Kansas. It was the debut album of a young singer-songwriter named Jennifer Knapp. The tracks are fantastic, but what caught my attention most were the lyrics. Outside maybe two other musicians, I had never heard Christian songs that felt this honest to me. There was a yearning I felt in the lyrics. In one song, Whole Again, she said, "If I give my life, if I lay it down, can you turn this life around? Can I be made clean by this offering of my soul? Can I be made whole again?" There was this sense of being drawn by Jesus and at the same time feeling in exile. Another song, Refine Me, says, "You're my God and my Father. I've accepted your Son, but my soul feels so empty now. What have I become?" I'd felt that. I'd done all the things I was supposed to do, and yet many of the things my church promised me weren't happening. What was going on? Knapp's songs contained authentic declaration of real struggles. Sometimes those struggles were internal feelings of inadequacy, even sinfulness. Other times those struggles were with the accepted preconceptions of Christian culture. In her song, In the Name, she wondered honestly, "To each his own won't lead you home, and probably never will." That hit hard. The whole album carried this deep sense of standing on the edge of something bigger, and that something felt like the presence of God to me. I followed Jennifer's next few releases, and then in 2010 she just disappeared, at least from the perspective of my small Christian world. What happened? Well, Jennifer came out, and the Christian music industry that had celebrated her and the Christian community that had commended her thought and bought her concert tickets just didn't have room. for a Christian musician who is openly gay. In the 14 years since, so much has happened. Jennifer found a new community. She had to. She found new fans. She had to. She got on with her life. She found a partner. She wrestled with what it means to have faith and have had a real experience with Jesus, and then at the same time to have been excluded from community by some of Jesus' followers. And then a couple of years ago, the idea surfaced for her to re-record her seminal album, Kansas. And the support that welled up for this project was, I think, beyond Jen's expectations. And she did it, and that album is now available. It's called Kansas 25. And I've been listening to this album over and over since it came out, and it has been such an interesting experience for me. The lyrics of the song are the same, the arrangements are similar, but I'm listening as someone who has spent 25 years going deeper in my pursuit of Jesus in the way that some characterize as deconstruction. And in the same way, the songs are also being sung by an artist with 25 years more life experience. And those 25 years include pain and joy, exclusion, new community, letting go of old and unhelpful theology, and embracing new things that are life-giving. And so for me, as I was listening to this album, those songs, they just hit so differently with the weight of 25 years more lived experience and more theological exploration. As I realized what was happening in me as a listener, I thought, man, I would love to talk with Jennifer about what happened for her as she did this. What was it like to re-record these songs? What was it like to face who she was as a young singer, a young writer? And what did she learn about her own spiritual development? Well, I reached out and I asked her, and she said yes. Jen's official bio says she's a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter, author, speaker, and advocate, known for her musical talents and commitment to social causes. With a rich history spanning over 2 decades, Knapp has left an indelible mark on the music industry. Her career includes the remarkable achievement of selling over 1 million albums with her first 3 releases: the gold-certified Kansas, 1998, Lay It Down, 2000, and The Way I Am, 2001. Alongside this commercial success, Knapp has been honored with 4 Dove Awards and garnered 2 Grammy nominations. I started my conversation with Jen by asking her what it felt like when she discovered that there was this whole community who wanted to revisit the Kansas album with her.
Really, the journey back to Kansas for me is a story of coming back to music. In 2010, I'd taken a big long break away from Christian music for sure. I knew I was never going back to that place, and I was also simultaneously coming out. And I have to be absolutely honest and say that I was completely ambivalent about, if not resistant to, in any way engaging in faith conversations with people in public for sure. Private, it's, private's another question. Also in that, my own discomfort of playing that older material for a variety of reasons when I look back. I was hurt by my religious experience. I was at a crossroads deciding how much of that I would engage in public or not. And also just getting new and back to music and really looking forward to doing the music that was ahead of me and not behind me. But all that to say is that show after show after show that I'm playing, even after I came out, were people talking so much, please play this song. And one of the famous stories that I tell is a lesbian bar I was hanging out in Philadelphia. And it's probably the first 6 months of me getting back out on the road and touring. And I might have come out after that. I can't remember, but it was in the early, at least inside the first year or so. And here I am on a Sunday night, and it's packed out, and there'd been a few drinks happening. About an hour or so into the show, the gals in the bar were like, play Martyrs and Thieves, which is one of the epic songs off of Kansas. And I didn't want to play it. I was afraid to play it. I didn't know if I would perform it well. I didn't know if I was just going to be mad by the end of it. It's a 6-minute long song, so it's a little bit of a commitment to like have to pretend you care if it turns out I didn't. But the crowd was just really begging me to play this, to the point because I understood something about the fact that my resistance to it was starting to very much be inhospitable. that was a very uncomfortable feeling for me. And it was, I just remember this moment. I ended up playing it. And the whole bar starts singing. And there are these,
Wow.
women holding each other. There are former youth group kids that are now adults that are just standing on top of the bar singing at the top of their lungs. And I looked around this room going, oh my gosh, if this obvious group of human beings can somehow not give up a song that means something to them, why am I giving up something that came from me and out of me? And that was, I remember that moment kind of opening the door up to my previous catalog. What was amazing to me, and this is kind of in the vein of what happens when you're a singer-songwriter, I felt that from my body. I play with my guitar, and I wrote these songs a long, long time ago in a room just by myself. And I could tell that these songs came from me. So even the parts of me that might have felt, intellectually alienated from them or spiritually alienated from them, I could tell when I put them on, they were my shoes. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
And,
wow.
Yeah. And that story, that's a story that started about 15 years ago. But throughout the course of that time, I feel like it was the people who had owned and listened to this music, and as so many people have described it to me, as this is the soundtrack of their experience. When somebody said that to me, I was like, I didn't want to be a person that took that away from them. I didn't want that, because at the heart of what I do as a musician and the way I go out into a public space, it's a gift. It's sharing, it's community, it's positive, it's affirming. So I don't want my shit to go on everybody else's table. That's mine to work through.
Right.
And and if I'm going through something or whatever, I've worn my heart on my sleeve from the day that I walked out on stage. And so it's not that I've ever kind of tried to veil that or hide that from my audience, but I don't necessarily think that sharing something means assuming that the rest of the room will take on, your level of frustration or anger. But to if I ever confess them out loud, it's a sense of help me release this. And so in a way, the story of Kansas kind of flips a little bit on its head for about 10 years, because it's my audience now giving that record back to me. And so I'll fast forward 25 years ahead. By the time we get to this celebration, I realize that, there are a couple of things that have happened in the lifetime of this record, and not the least of which is a narrative for LGBTQ community inside of faith circles, right, where we come out and we have been forcibly exiled or marginalized or even completely erased from narratives. And that is one of the things, not all the things, but one of the things that's kind of tempted to have happen with this particular record, to act like it didn't exist or that it wasn't a significant record in the history of contemporary Christian music. And it's not that I felt like I needed to do that for myself, but it was literally over the last 15 years hearing people talk about how critical these particular songs had been to them in journey. And even when I wasn't there, I didn't have anything to do with it. But it's a part of our spirituality, a part of our community, a part of the fabric of who we are and we collectively share that now exists out there. And no one can take that away. I know that people know the songs. I don't have any need to sell more copies of this record. But what I really wanted to do was give that gift to say thank you. I heard you. I know that this song has journeyed with you. And I bet that we have all changed a little bit in that 25 years. We're the same people, but the experience has changed the filter with which we see the world. And I thought, wouldn't it be an interesting artistic experience to go back and record this record and see what that sounds like, to see if we can actually get, if this record has been doing what it's been doing, will it do a new thing and reflect the journey of all of us that have kind of been through that space. It's an acknowledgement at the very least that we're all willing to understand our own evolution, our own journey within our faith tradition, within our theology, within our community, and all the things good and bad that come with it. And yet somehow, even when we're frustrated with where maybe our particular faith community may or may not be, or whatever the church in air quote is or isn't, we're somehow persisting in some way. And, for me, that's kind of the strange thing. I didn't really want to make another Christian record, but it's also a part of my story, and it's a part of our story. And so no matter where we kind of end up with it, it's still reflective. I think when I meet the audience of people that I hang out with all the time, I'm struck by how genuinely affirming human beings they are, how amazingly integrated into their communities they are in terms of, positive influences inside of their worlds. And not everyone is still persisting in practicing Christianity, but they're all extraordinary human beings who have lived examined lives and challenged themselves to be still pursuing the hopefulness of their best selves. This happens to be where I started. And to be able to celebrate that a lot of us took a lot of positive things out of that was something that I thought was really important to not necessarily erase, but to actually celebrate.
That's really interesting on so many fronts. One front is just, most creative people that I know kind of have this drive to keep moving forward. And the idea of going back and revisiting creative work of yours from a previous era of your life, I would say most creative people I know are not really excited about that. They want to move forward to the next thing. They're not the same person that they were when they made that previous thing. When I go back and look at a sermon that I wrote 25 years ago, I'm like, ugh, I'm so sorry that I did this to people.
Yeah, we don't really want to reread it, or
right.
It kind of falls short. But yeah, I would say that that's true. I think in coming up to the 25-year anniversary of the record, I'd had, a lot of close friends going, we ought to do something. I'm like, I don't know. Like, it took me a while to kind of get enthusiastic about, it wasn't a given that I was going to re-record this record. I'll put it that way. And it wasn't until, that narrative that I've just kind of come across had kind of illuminated itself and started to realize I don't need to do it. I have no personal stake in going back to it, but fueled with making a gift was a project I'd never really done before. Because if you think about an artist, most of the time we're creating new stuff all the time, right? And then you go into the studio and you go and record it, and you're going out, and it's always a new thing. You make it, and then you wait to see what life extends out from it. There's very few opportunities that I get to know what you like.
Yeah, right.
How it will touch your heart, how it has touched your heart. Right. And that I can give you a gift that I know will hit you right in the center. I haven't talked about any of these, before we released this project out to the masses, I hadn't given a lot of lip service to what was happening with the re-recording. So it was just, hey, it's 25 years, we're going to re-record it, it's going to be really great. It wasn't till after it released that everybody starts chatting, you're listening to it, right?
Yeah.
And sharing their stories about listening to this record, that I was like, oh my gosh, it actually happened. The gift of this, the reminiscing, the ability that people had to see themselves and even rescue some of their own soundtrack in ways that they'd never imagined was such an honor to witness. To hope that a project can do that, that's so weird. It's a strange kind of ministry. It's not really a recording project, and in a weird way, I can't believe I just used the M word. In a lot of, but in a lot of ways, right? The first time I recorded this record, I'm a new kid. I'm a new kid on the block. I know nothing about contemporary Christian music. We're sitting down. These are songs that you never heard. So in some way, every performance is trying to woo you into liking me, liking the song, hoping that it just hits some deeply spiritual mark. And it's all bullshit. Because at the end of the day, all we can really do is live authentically and hope that it arrives at the spot, that who we are or what we offer is a gift. Yeah. You don't know that, kind of the first time through. And I think that's the same way with other projects now. This experience turned out to be a completely unique experience for me, because then it opened me up to I don't have to woo somebody with this recording. I just had to sit down and live with it. I had to live with what I'd written. I had to
Right.
live with the body that I had. Now I had to build a new relationship with these songs. Like people are going, "Oh, when are you going to re-record, Taylor
Right, right.
Swift, your other records?" And I'm like,
Right.
I know that I'll do that. Like,
Yeah.
this was a different mission. It wasn't just re-recording a project.
It seems like, there's this completely unexpected thing that happened, right? So you had this moment in time where, because of coming out, sort of that era of your music career and the community and the audience that existed at that point in time was brought to a close. You didn't do it, but it was kind of done. And then you go on and in your own journey and you do the things that you do as a musician, as an artist, you take time off. While you're on that train, this album still exists separately from you, having interactions with people. And something that you planted in that album grew separately from you. Like you were not watering it.
Absolutely.
You were off doing other things.
I would have told you that I would have really loved it if it died. Like there were points in my experience where I was so frustrated by where conservative Christian culture was going that if I could have taken my name out of it and taken any role that I had in, I would have loved to have had that happen. As you were kind of speaking, I was like, this is what happens when we accept the truth of our journey. When we acknowledge where we've been and what we've done. Like that's what this project really is. And I can't take away the fact that I've had a significant experience inside of my faith community.
Yeah.
Now, where I go from here and what my future looks like is anybody's guess. I'm still on a journey forward as much as I've ever been. But there's a part of us, especially when we've been harmed or we've been frustrated or we find a level of disagreement or a conflict, the idea that exorcism works or excising something is the way that we will find healing and hope. I'm not saying some things are bad, take them out. Cancer's not a good thing to leave around.
Right.
But at the same time, like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as I say, you do that, you get a wet, critically injured baby.
Right, yeah.
You throw a portion of yourself out.
Yeah.
And is that really what you want to do? But whether one chooses to do that or not, my point has been, don't just do that, but think first, really examine it, be able to live in those things. And sometimes you will find that the some of the pain and suffering that we experience through those types of journeys is about leaving things behind that are actually uniquely ours.
Mm-hmm.
A fabric that's interwoven into who we are. Like when I talk about these songs, like when I talk about playing them and I feel that I know they came from my body and my person every time I play them, I cannot deny it. Mm-hmm. When I play them again, I am reconnecting in a weird way with something that is of me.
Yeah.
That is honest. And I think in that I realized, in feeling that physical sensation of playing that music, I realized that faith for me was a really important thing that I didn't want to have lost in the conflict. That I was actually willing to fight for that and through that, or maybe not fight, but to be at peace, like to be still and know that I am God. I use that so much to myself, going, why am I fighting a battle that, am I worried about what everybody else thinks about my faith? Am I doing my faith the right way so I'll be qualified to be called Christian or not Christian?
Right.
Frankly, I don't care what you call me anymore. I really genuinely don't. It doesn't mean that I don't have a discipline. Like the more secure that you get and an understanding of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, it's amazing how quickly the external voices and critiques and judgment become disempowered to have influence, like to kind of knock you off your mission and where you want to go, like the confidence you have to choose your path.
Yeah.
It's like most of the time, like when we're uncertain, right? It's really easy to knock us off when we're not as certain as what we want to accomplish or where we want to head. So yeah, it's one of those things that it just amazed me that by just being able to accept, like, yeah, that's where I was at. These are the things that I did. And you know what? Darn it. Like that really changed my life in some really remarkable and profound ways that I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose my ability to reach back and touch that memory, to be connected to that memory, because I realize that no matter what I do, I'm really actually not going to be able to disentangle myself from it. It is a part of me. It is part of my journey.
Yeah, so this is the weird gift / torture then that your audience handed you, right? They like said,
it was a weird torture.
Like
Jennifer,
we would like you to go back into a room with your younger self, half your age, and just hang out together and see what happens. Like, what do you learn? What threads remain important? What needs to be set aside? What happens when you go back into that room with your younger self and face who she was and what her hopes were?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I didn't do is I didn't go back and listen to the original recording. That I put onto Steve Hendelong's shoulder. Steve is the producer of this record. I put this on Steve to kind of listen to the old stuff, because I didn't want to have it in my head enough. Like, I wanted my voice of today to be able to carry it. I neither wanted to copy it, nor did I want to be intimidated by it. I wanted the song as it sat with me today. I knew that I knew things had changed a lot. I mean, I'm a different guitar player now. I sing differently now. And on a weird note, like, there's some like archaeological differences. Archaeological? I don't know. That there are like some actual tangible material differences in the record. Like, this record's 6 minutes longer than the original, and that's
you cut a
largely
song.
because it. Well, on the vinyl, I had to drop one because vinyl is like a finite, right? It's a finite space. So because of the length of recording, I had to drop Refine Me. So it's only on the digital versions. But I also changed, and I was adamant to have the a cappella piece, the song called Faithful to Me. I was adamant that I wanted it intact. So the way that I sing it live has always been a verse and a chorus and a verse and a chorus. It's just those two sections. And there's no recorded version of it in that form. So those were really the only things that I had. But yeah, between tempos and the way that we just played these songs, and even strangely, I did some arrangement where I did cut like some bars from songs, and in an attempt to make them shorter, just because of form, just like an artistic decision that I just had. But even with those cuts, it's strange. Yeah, we ended up having a materially longer record than we did. So we're both, I think, sort of like age does. It kind of like gets us all sagging.
Yeah, right.
Gets us longer in a lot of ways, a little grayer. I needed a little bit more time to do the record. Like, the idea of going 180 beats a minute was not really on for me at this point. But yeah, but it was intriguing that, like, it would have been fascinating to see. It was kind of a weird science experiment in that way, like, we just play these songs. Will they be the same as the other one? And clearly they weren't. And it was fun to see that kind of show itself.
When you went kind of, metaphorically back into that room with your younger self, what are you noticing sort of spiritually and personally? You talk about how these songs feel like they came from your body and they feel deeply connected to you, but you're also in many ways different. Or I should say, you've been through a lot since then that has shaped who you are. So when you're in this dialogue, who you are now and the journey that you've had and the spiritual journey that you've had with your younger self, who's right at the beginning of the career, who's a fairly new Christian, who's in this brand new burgeoning industry, CCM, with all kinds of new pressures. Like, when you're in dialogue with that person, what did you notice?
Well, it's interesting that you say the younger self, because singing is such a physical thing, like singing and playing. And it was really in the performances of these that it began in like the physically aware spaces, like when I'm holding my breath for a really long phrase, or something. I'm like, what was she doing? I would literally be talking out loud going, that young whippersnapper. Or if I was frustrated with a turn of phrase or a chord or arrangement, things that I wouldn't do now, for better or for worse, right? It was amazing that physically performing the songs made a connection to realizing I am not in the same body that I was, 25 years ago. And to start talking about myself, I would like literally, yeah, that girl, young Jen, is so full of herself. What was she thinking? But that physical connection really gave me pause to think back to, like, in connecting and seeing her in that way. This is going to sound weird and so dissociative, but being able to see and watch yourself kind of in your imagination, be able to look back, look at her, see what she was doing, bewildered, enthusiastic, in no way deceitful. Like, it was lovely to be able to look in on her in a weird way and go, wow, she was really just genuinely doing her thing. Mm-hmm. And at times that I was critical, even in the process in the present day, kind of going back and recording something, I would go, you know what? You got to hand it to that kid. Don't take anything away from her. I don't think I had given myself a level of grace in this time of my life, not as an apology, but to not be embarrassed about my sold out Kool-Aid drinking years of Christianity. I think that was part of it.
It was earnest.
It was earnest. It really was. You know, I think that same spirit of that young person still lives in me today. I love being earnest about my work. I've never regretted being honest and authentic and wearing my heart on my sleeve. I've regretted when I knew I went against that. I'm more than happy to take responsibility for who and what I've been and what I've done throughout my life. I prefer that to denial or to trying to twist myself into something that is not seeking what my heart really truly longs for, and which is a weird thing to say in a Christian environment, and still a hard thing for me to say now, because I think oftentimes, particularly with Christianity, there's a lot of conversation in and around the denial of self, and a mistrust of our inner voice, and to seek something from our own hearts as genuinely corrupt, as opposed to, you know, replacing with our inner heart and our inner voice with the voice of God, right?
Yeah, right.
I don't know how we know the difference of that, to be honest. To me, like, I know when I'm lying to myself, and I know when I'm not. I mean, I sometimes find out later.
Right.
But, you know, I think it's been a really easy thing for the church to kind of take away our trust of our own self and an autonomy away from us, and which I would put in a theological position as the temple of the Holy Spirit being in our hearts. Like, if the sanctuary that is within us isn't trustworthy, and we don't trust that sanctuary, then where do we begin? Because that is the temple. If anyone's concerned that is some way of a denial or an opening to a dark space, I would say quite the opposite. I think it raises the ante for our responsibility to know that we have a discipline and a practice and a care and an awareness and a will to create in ourselves a holy sanctuary.
Yeah.
To be responsible for the care of that. That's not accidental. That's not just simply just trying to set everything on fire, but to actually build something mindfully, you know, with purpose.
Yeah.
And with, you know, that to me has done exactly the opposite. It wasn't setting the foxes loose at all for me. Like, to be able to go, no, this is my voice and this is my heart. And that included days where I was like, screw you, God. This is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like, this is what everybody else says, or this is what my church says, or this is what, you know, this is maybe where I feel like God may or may not want me to go. And I have said, no, I'm not willing, you know, and just being honest with myself about, like, whether I'm resistant. And I'm more Jonah than anything. Like, I have sat under a withering vine for more hours than I cared to confess.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, none of us change, none of us do work, none of us go down a road at some point unless we or get the full enjoyment of that journey, unless we at some point have acknowledged our choice and our free will to go down that road.
Yeah. So,
you know, it's not that I want to be in contest of that, but it, like, the joy and the raised responsibility of saying, I will be responsible for my heart, and I will do the work to know what is the voice of my heart. And to hope,
wow.
and to do the work, because what I want is to be an affirming human being. I want to live a life that when other people are around me, they experience a sense of affirmation, that they know that I will love them, that they know that I'm a person who is interested in the liberation, that I'm interested in life over death.
Yes.
I'm less interested in religion, and what I found, like, through music in this process of creativity, is it being able to go, no, that is in me. It really is in me. I really do want to sing. I really do want to sing this song. I really am angry.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
Sure.
Being able to, that earnestness of that young girl, I think, is something that I'm so grateful to see still lives in me,
Yes.
even though sometimes she embarrasses me.
That's so wonderful. There's a line in Visions that has stayed in my brain ever since hearing the first album. And it is this line that I think speaks to that continuity you just mentioned, which is, they say that I am much too demanding to want a better place than here. And that there's so much in that, because there's the they, whoever they are, right? There's all of these voices that are telling you, don't feel how you feel, don't want something different. What we tell you is right is what's right, just by the line that we're giving you. So you've got the whole they, and you've got this heart, this little heart that's saying, no, there's got to be more than this. Like, don't you see how this is not enough? Don't you see how this is leaving something important out? Don't you see how we're not loving in the way that Jesus taught us to love? That heart is crying out, there's got to be something better than this. Isn't there? Come on, guys. And that tension between the voice of the they, who's saying, no, this is really all there is, how we're telling you it needs to be. You just need to get on board, right? And that yearning heart, to me, that's not demanding, right? That, I feel like, is the Spirit of God at work in us, wanting to see the life, wanting to see the fulfillment of liberation, wanting to see grace really be grace instead of just a branding on another set of standards for who gets to be in and out of a community, right? That's there. And I feel like, as I hear you talk today, I feel like I hear that same continuity to that earnest kid on stage.
Yeah, I think for me, it definitely channels the direction of keeping hope. It's more about the foolishness that I have and persistently hoping and persistently challenging myself to do better and to seek better.
Yeah. And
to have an imagination. I don't want to necessarily get into the weeds or stress anybody out, but heaven for me is a very hard thing for me to imagine in the ways that it's typically been described to me. It's
sure.
Like, that's the thing I'm working for, right? That I'm going to be rewarded by choices that I make in this life, by living in some, to me, imaginary space in the future that's, just grand, up in the sky somewhere. That's not what I mean by the better place.
Right.
I'm demanding of myself the imagination. I'm demanding of myself the courage to maintain hope. Mm-hmm. It's not a pass or fail.
Right.
But it is completely saying, don't give up.
Yes.
Every single day that I am going to drive to be heading in the direction that isn't trying to attain, I'm not trying to attain or get or be rewarded. It's a different type of thing that hope does. It is our aspiration to live into and unto the heights of what love and grace and liberation can be. And I don't even fully know what all of those things are yet.
Yeah.
But as I've continued to be demanding of that, at the time that I wrote that, I was single, celibate, and had no hopes or prospects for love in the future. In fact, a lot of this record, I was just beginning the journey of figuring out how to love myself, because if we're to love the Lord God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself, well, I was like, I can't love my neighbor because I don't know anything about how to love myself.
Yeah.
That's where I started. And if a lot of my early work seems narcissistic, it's because it was I didn't know how to love myself. I was trying to figure out and work out what God saw in me that was loving. And as I started to piece that together, fast forward 10 years into the future until when I met my partner, I was starting to understand something about love enough to then now come in contact with my neighbor or somebody else, like somebody I wanted to love and somebody whose love I wanted in return. Was like another way out from my narcissistic center.
Sure.
And going out and stretching further and further and further, and to see how much, to be demanding of that.
Yeah.
I don't need to prove anything, not in that sense, but to be open and aware and continually willing to learn something about and a new area of which I may find to love that I didn't before, to let go of something or to discover something. Just constantly kind of looking for an opportunity to grow. I see it in there. I'm like, oh, that kid, she probably didn't know what the hell she was talking about.
Of course, yeah.
You know, but it's still in me. And that's kind of going, that is the root. And that's kind of when I look at that and kind of go back to the baby in the bathwater, or even the grace, going, if I'd have shut her down then, that theology wouldn't have grown from a seed of what that was to what it is today. I can think of 20 more examples of where that is a root of something that I can see connected to its growth in me today. And I'm so grateful for her enthusiasm and her earnestness, like I said, even though sometimes she embarrasses me.
That's so rich. I feel like maybe that's part of the thread in this conversation of deconstruction, right? Is that I guess for some people, deconstruction is about tearing down or needing to tear down structures that have been unhelpful. But my experience has been that there's been a continuous unfolding that has taken me deeper in ways that the community that raised me didn't expect or prepare me for. And that yearning that you talk about, that maybe, maybe the young Jennifer with that yearning, maybe she's naive, maybe she's a little bit narcissistic. I mean, we all are at 25, right? Maybe her vision is limited, but that yearning for what I believe is the fullness of life that we were made for, that yearning is the thread that has taken me into the places that I've gone that look externally to some folks like deconstruction. And when I listened to Kansas 25 the first time, I felt that same thing. Some part of this obviously is my own projection. I have no idea what's going on inside of you.
You can have it. You have your own life and experience. I wouldn't take it away from you.
Thank you so much. But I hear you, and it just felt like a richer, deeper experience that had spaciousness for the painful, the uncertain. It seems like the longing is for something that's bigger than that, a life that has space for all of that, even when it doesn't fit on a stage or inside someone's preconceived expectation of what you need to be.
It's interesting because when I go back to that time, one of the details of my experience at the time that I was writing that it's very much attached to my coming into Christianity and having and experiencing a profound culture shock with the church community. So unlike a lot of my peers and my friends who had essentially evangelistically witnessed to me, and I converted, I accepted Jesus Christ. And that's so weird every time I say that because it's not, I remember, I can't believe I did that. Even to this day, I can't believe that I actually did that. At the same time, it profoundly changed my life. So how do I make sense of that?
Right.
But I was so earnest.
Yes.
Like I genuinely wanted to be a new creation. I didn't even know what that meant, but I wanted and I understood something needed to do an about face in my world. And I wasn't wooed necessarily by religion. I was even rolling my eyes at the time going, what am I doing here in the space with these folks? But I was definitely, there was something there that had sparked in my heart a hope that I hadn't yet seen in a possibility of loving and caring for and being connected to something greater than myself. That's the best way I know how to describe it. And so here I am, like basically a hot mess, not having any tradition or experience inside of the faith community at all. Essentially, I was walking into church on a Sunday morning, smoking, like putting my cigarette butts right out on the church steps, walking into church, dropping a few F-bombs, coming right back out and lighting back up. And it was pretty rough for the Baptist contingency around me. And they were so excited that I was there.
Right.
But, a few months into it, they're like, okay, we need to talk about, your becoming that new creation now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to start putting things away. It was, conversations about, not cussing anymore, conversations about not having sex, conversations about not smoking. Like, what was I going to do on the outside to start looking like what God wanted my heart to be on the inside? And in some ways, I think that landed with me okay, in that I was definitely reading my Bible. Like, I read that sucker. I mean, I was diving into it. I was taking my discipleship seriously. I was going to Bible study groups and learning mostly in a Baptist feel, but I'd had other groups as well. I was definitely trying to become a Christian because in earnestness, I made this decision and I meant my decision.
Mm-hmm.
So when everyone around me is saying this is what a good Christian looks like, then
Right.
if this is a good heart of mine that wants to make good on the discovery of this profound joy and free new grace that I'm experiencing in my life. I wanted that to be evident. So, of course, that was helpful in some ways to have my community go, this is the way, if you look and act and conform in this way, you will be celebrated. But the side of that, and even though I was going into discipleship and Bible studies, one of the critiques I have in this is part of that thing is this idea that we're not necessarily, where the rubber hits the road sometimes is what we are imagining is we're shaping ourselves into a conformity to look like something that looks like Christianity. And a lot of the deconstruction space, we're calling upon what many people are telling us in good ways and bad. There's some positive to that. I mean, there are people that have been living this journey long before I have, or long before sometimes that we find it or we get into it. So we always begin to a certain degree, and this is where I say we can be a little bit graceful. We are relying on the stories that are told to us,
Yeah.
and the flame that we as moths were drawn to. But the difference in this, at some point, is our level of autonomy and engagement, our development of our own, and I would again go back to that kind of sacred temple in ourselves, of the part where we begin to be part of living out that faith, to be able to have quiet times were a thing. I don't know if that's still around. And it's like, oh, you have to have a quiet time every day.
Right.
And so what that was told, I'll say it was told to me as a discipline that was my obligation as a good Christian,
Right.
to spend an hour a day reading my Bible, praying, and I would journal. So I did those things, quote unquote, religiously. I was glad I did that discipline because I began like those. I enjoy that time. I enjoy reflection, but I also hated that somebody would ask me, did you do your quiet time?
Right. Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
it's this box or this thing that we're doing rather than so on one hand, I had a discipline that gave me an opportunity to practice and begin to engage in my daily and the care and the awareness and my own practice of developing my spiritual life. But weirdly, no one actually taught me how to develop my spiritual life. They told me to have a quiet time, and if I didn't check off with my accountability partner and said that I'd only had 3 quiet times in 7 days, then there was a judgment about whether or not that was fruitful, and that wasn't helpful.
Right.
But what was more helpful is that I actually didn't have time for a quiet time because I had 3 other hours of I'm completely obsessing about this other issue that I've been thinking about. So I didn't want a quiet time that was an hour. I wanted a life that was contemplative.
Right. Yeah.
The
Yes.
whole life. What I didn't want to do what Christianity told me. I wanted to live my faith.
Yeah.
And I don't want to knock the community because we do need that, and we do need the witnesses, and we do need to be connected to one another to help and share and tell these stories.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a difference between sharing a story and witnessing that information and then telling somebody that this is what you should conform to.
Right.
You should look like us, instead of having collaborators that are being with you as you live your life. And so for me, discipleship taught me what conformity looked like in a lot of ways. You know, these are the things that Christians do, say, and act, and if you come out the other side, you'll be a good Christian.
Right.
But nobody actually told me that if I have a contemplative life and I engage and I ask at least this one question: what does it mean to live in the Spirit of Christ? That is a question that I've been working on for 35 years.
Right. Yes.
What is the Spirit of Christ? What is, if I say, what's the spirit of Marc? What's the spirit of Jen? I have to spend time. You know, you have to spend time with somebody else. You have to look
Right.
at what they've done and what they do and stop talking and start watching. You know, live with and be around. It's not just spirit as in fantasy.
Right.
I think we know what we mean. If it's in the spirit of, you can write a song in the spirit of Jen Knapp. So there are people out there who do it. It's not, you know, my spirit isn't doing it. So far as I know, I don't have my own unique Holy Spirit that's going out and doing that. But I wanted to understand that question.
Yes.
And as I read the whole text, as I looked around my community, as I looked around the world in what this meant, that began to say, these are the things I want to be propelling me to the future. So it's the idea of being told what to do so quickly felt like I was supposed to be conforming to something, and that's not what drew me in there. It was a spirit and longing to know what the spirit of Jesus was. And I'm like, well, okay, great. I said F-bomb 3 times today in church. I'm sorry. Here's $1 for the jar, but I wasn't cruel to anyone today.
Yeah.
And I genuinely have become a lot more hospitable to myself and to other people. I'm becoming more compassionate as a human being in my life in ways that I never even thought was possible. I don't care what I get credit for or don't, but my life has changed because of that, and the people around me's life has changed, and that's the true test of it. So that kind of undoing, I was already starting at, and I think that's held up in kind of trying to go, I know I'm being told these things, but there's also a spirit to this that seems more. It seems wider. It seems not conforming. It seems rebellious in its nature.
Yes.
Because people will be confused. People will say that you're going out on a limb. People will say, they will say. And you still have to go out there and live it. The thing that you hear in your heart, whether it's contemplative or prayer or God, I don't know how we say that. But if whatever that still small voice is, it's a voice that you want to follow for whatever reason, and you go to follow it, then test it is the next step, is to take it out of that place where you discovered it, hopefully in a contemplative place, and to go out and test it and to see if it is something that is actually honest. Will this bring life? Will this discovery or this longing that I have to be compassionate mean that I talk more or talk less
Right.
when I leave my home? You know, you have to go out, and sometimes I've been wrong. You know, sometimes I did not get that right. I have to go back. I didn't understand that. It's not working because I'm not getting it. I'm not hearing it yet. So more work for me. But that kind of going back to those spaces and for this, it was written by a girl who didn't want a less life. Didn't want a constricted life, but I wanted, like, I read the scripture, you shall have life and you shall have it abundantly. And I read that in a way that I wanted that.
Yeah.
And I want that now to this day. And every time that I took that out, I would have somebody else come over the top of me saying, be careful about that abundant life.
Right.
Because you can have too much liberty in your life. And I'm not asking to sample every drug out on the street. I've done that. I know that kills my body, and that's not good, and I make poor choices. I want abundant life. I want my hand to be open. I want to be non-threatening to other human beings. I want to not be jealous of you. I want to be invested in your life and watch you grow and flourish. And I want you to not be an enemy, and I want you to be a partner with me in that. Like, let's start there. That's what abundant life is. Yeah. All I can do is try and take care of my space around me. When I started looking at things like that, You know, I was finding myself in contest and being pushed back inside of some of my faith communities. Like, no, it's doing it the way this looks. I'm like, I know that I can do the thing that looks that way, and right now I'm angry because I'm doing the thing and I'm getting credit for doing the thing, but I'm an asshole on the inside. I don't want to be doing this. I don't agree with this. And, you know, that went on to be a breaking point with me for some things, at the point where I was part of some of the spaces, some of the reason why I kind of didn't work inside of Christian music anymore. You know, there are those things that they do feel like we're deconstructing and we're having to undo those voices. You know, at the same time, you know, give the community a little bit of grace. We do have to share our experience by telling and allowing people to witness our stories. But I think if there's a difference at all, a little bit at this time, I would probably say there's the spot of authority inside of that, and looking at people we know and reliably trust more on a lateral plane rather than an up and down plane, rather than a plane of people telling us what we can do kind of up and down and where you succeed and you rise, or, you know, kind of how the membership is counted, but rather who are the people who are willing to collaborate with you, the people who are willing to witness as you experience and test and build your faith and exercise the free will that we have to be able to actually be participants in, and joyfully so, in the journeys that we are taking.
That was good, and I feel like it really captures a practical picture of what the better place is that we're longing for, right? That kind of life is the better place that we're demanding, and you were doing it then, and you're doing it now, and you're living in that, and it's really encouraging. I mean, I was floored by how deeply Kansas 25 impacted me, and spent time.
You and a lot of other
right?
folks. It's nuts.
Yeah, and I had to spend some time trying to understand, like, what has happened here for me in this, and it was still deeply meaningful. And so I just am so grateful that you chose to enter into the difficult space to give that gift to all of us, and hopefully in some way to yourself, because it's been quite impactful, and I'm just so thankful to have that as part of my journey.
Well, thank you. I would say thank you for that. I mean, that is its gift. Like, there are moments, and I'm sure as you've had years in the ministry, there are times you look back on your influence or your participation inside a faith community and probably go, why am I here, and have I done anything?
Right.
Or what's it mean? The older I get, legacy is not quite the word I'm comfortable with, but I mean, I think we all kind of hope that the trail behind us isn't a path of devastation.
Right, at least.
You know, so that's all to say is that I genuinely have felt so honored to be able to witness folks take a moment and just give them, like you were saying, like, to sense, like, the response that a lot of people have had to Kansas going, I've heard that a lot, people having to say, wow, I really had to take more than a few moments, like a day or two, and some people are still a little bit longer depending on where they are on their journey, but like that kind of pause, I think particularly in our current climate where we're so pressured by the tyranny of the urgent, while social media and phones and alerts are going off all the time and demanding our attention, to take a minute to be able to check in with your own self and your own journey in your life, to have offered a gift that allowed someone to do that, for me, is just out, like, I can't even get my head around it. Like, I wish I could have said, yeah, that's what I meant to do. Like, that's a total lie. Like, I can't claim that, but it's beautiful to witness that, and to know that has, when I look back on my experience in the last 25 years, in the weird way, I kind of connect back to the earnestness of that young gal and go, wow, she really did demand that, and she hasn't stopped. To be able to know that I like playing and I like making records, it's fun. But I also, when I came back to career 2.0, as I'll call it, I really wondered, is this going to be meaningful to me in any way? Because I don't really care about money. And I like playing and performing, but believe it, and as self-centered as I may sound and contemplative I may be, I'm actually not interested in all the praise. I don't want to be a rock star. Why am I doing this? Why am I coming back and playing? Like, if I'm just going to go to bars and play music for money and just do all the miles on the road, is this going to be a meaningful life to me? I had no idea that, because I was like, there'll be no ministry in front of me, there'll be no reconnecting, there'll be no public dialogue in and around faith, because the last thing I want people to do is put a Christian in the headline of my name. Well, I can't get around that anymore. People still do it, even no matter how much I cuss and no matter how far I've gone out. And I'm not writing specifically about Christianity, and this blows my mind. All I ever wanted to do in my work was to just leave a good path, like to open the door up to something that I don't know, but something I didn't write the rules of love. I just know that when you love people and you hope for people and you go into a room and you want to offer a gift to people and you offer it and you don't expect any. Career 1.0, like, it was like it's more like propaganda. Constantly kind of like, you have to be a representative of Christianity all the time. And now I'm not trying to represent Christianity. I'm trying to offer a gift.
Yeah.
It's strange that, like, now, it doesn't blow your mind?
Yeah, right.
Like,
no, what you just described is what it ought to be. Like, that ought to be Christianity, not the image management, just the offering the hospitable gift.
Who are you? Who are you, Marc? And what is the gift that you have?
Yeah.
What is the holy gift of you that you offer and present to the world? What do you work on? What do you uncover? How do you spend your time? How do you raise the bar to be the fullest you, the best you? And I'm not talking best like the best abs,
right.
the best
right.
beard and goatee. That's not what I'm talking about. How do you really make a mark to let the people you know love them and literally change their lives forever?
Yes. Yeah.
If there is a spirit, a Holy Spirit, a love of God that's permeating through and in and all things, how, and in this space that I have found myself in this moment, how do I know how to recognize that? How do I get in rhythm with that? How do I be the unique me in this space that adds to that space? It is the thing that I will say, regardless of where I have found it, to anyone I speak, I'll be talking to a cabbie or talking to somebody who goes, oh, I heard this about you, that you're a Christian. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's where I learned that, and that's where I practice that. That's fine. But here's the thing. I'm here for you right now. Like, I'm not trying to sell you something. I don't want anything from you. I just want to be with you and witness you. How can I help you today? Like, what do you need? How do I be friends with you? To me, that was, and then like it goes back to an early beef I had with evangelicalism. Like, man, don't just try and sell guys on a street corner, standing on soapboxes, yelling turn or burn, telling you that you're going to go to hell and that you're going to be punished unless you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior today. I'm like, that's not a witness. It's not a witness.
Yeah.
What changes people is that you actually connect to them. I was in some ways critiquing my own experience into Christianity. What got me here was more about the spirit of the people that I was with than any of the talk of the spirit that those people did.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the coercion, like the kind of coercive nature. It was the relationships that I built, the participation in community, the understanding, and being able to step back and be able to see and witness something good and something holy. I am amazed that I get to do that to this day. Every day I go, even if I'm bored and I go to a show and I'm like, oh, I'm tired now. All my gear weighs really heavy. I can't believe I have to drive 6 hours today. But I get up and I think, I wonder who I will meet today. I wonder what they will teach me today. I wonder what they will show me, and I wonder what I will show them. And just waiting for that to just happen. I wonder what fragrance the room will have when we get there. Oftentimes it's beer and body odor. It's every day is unique because human beings are extraordinary. And if you tell another human being that you see their extraordinariness, it's amazing to see how their faces light up and how extraordinary they really do become. And that's what I think about my audience, which is weird. People who are around me all the time know this about me, is that I really hate saying fan base or audience or any of that, because I feel like I'm going out and connecting, and it's been probably strangely more of service and more of a gift than I would have ever have imagined in my previous days in Career 1.0. Not to say that it wasn't earnest then, but it's just a whole other level that, it's good because the money's crap and the gear and the venues sometimes are crap too. But yeah, the people are here, even though we're not necessarily, doing, like I was told originally when I quit contemporary Christian music, like, well, you'll never have a platform again because you aren't doing the work for the Lord. And I'll be like, well, you should maybe come out and hang out with some people, because you just threw off a whole lot of people who were kind of having church. But and we didn't preach any. We were just gathered. We were 2 or more there gathered in the Spirit. And I shudder to think anybody who doesn't understand that thinks that I'm speaking religiously. I'm not. People are amazing human beings, and I am so grateful that those amazing human beings have continued to keep me standing up and have never mocked me for my earnestness.
Oh, so good. Jennifer, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for this album and the long, long road of work that you've done getting to it. It's an honor to spend this time with you and to be one of the recipients of how you've shared your journey.
Well, it's a privilege, Marc. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for asking me.
At first glance, this conversation is an interesting window into the life of a creative person who had the unique opportunity to go back and reflect on who they were 25 years ago. But that's not all this is. There's something important here, I think, for all of us, even if we don't have a body of work to look back on. See, Jen's story is a story of growth. Now, that doesn't mean every part was fun. Growth means change. Change always means loss, and loss means there's going to be grief in the story. But that process of changing, growing, losing, grieving allows us to let go of what came before that was limiting or unhealthy or just plain wrong, so that we can embrace the good, the new that perhaps God is setting before us. In my own story, there have been times when my life of faith was really all about security. It was a kind of faith that longed for certainty, that demanded certainty from teachers, from scripture, from sermons, from precise step-by-step methods for prayer or evangelism or church growth. Well, that kind of Christianity is about making us feel okay, making us feel that the uncertainty of life can be managed by a God who turns out to be more like a wish-granting genie. But then life happened. There was change, and loss, and grief, and growth. And instead of yearning for security, I now long for transformation. Like Jen, you heard her say this, I don't want to do devotional times. I want to have a contemplative life. I don't want to do church-authorized service projects. I want to be the kind of person who is generous to those around me and steps in where necessary to bear the burden of others who are suffering. I yearn for a life that reflects a place that is better than this. Young Jen's yearning and her earnest heart inspired me 25 years ago. And the journey that Jen has been on since challenges me today in a different way. Can I persist in faith even when the calling of Jesus doesn't look like what I was taught? Can I grow in my pursuit of God even if it takes me beyond the safe borders that I was trained as a child in or that I learned as a young pastor? Can I continue step by step to follow the Spirit of Jesus wherever that guidance leads, even if other followers of Jesus don't understand? There was a moment in the interview where Jen spoke right to me by name, and I wanted to pass her challenge on to you because I think this might be an invitation from the Spirit. Who are you? What is the holy gift you offer and present to the world? And as we reflect on that, I wonder if we as followers of Jesus can let go of those motives that lead to exclusion in the pursuit of certainty and security, and rather embrace the other-centered co-suffering way so that we can participate in God's work to love the world toward healing. May you sense the holy yearning for a better place than here, and trust the better way of Jesus to lead us toward others and toward God. Thanks for listening. You can check out what Jen is up to on her website, which includes tour dates and much more about her music, www.jenniferknapp.com. And of course, she's got a bunch of great albums on all the streaming services. Notes for today's episode and any of the links that have been mentioned you'll find at marcalanschelske.com, TAW055. Now, if you found today's conversation helpful, interesting, compelling, then subscribe to Apprenticeship Notes, my email newsletter. It's monthly-ish, really. I send it out about 8 to 10 times a year. I'll never spam you. I'll never sell your information. This newsletter includes an exclusive essay that you won't find anywhere else, insider commentary on my latest podcast episode, on my blog posts, books that I recommend, spiritual practices I'd like you to try, and more. And if you subscribe, you're going to get a free little book, an ebook called The Anchor Prayer, a prayer and practice for remaining grounded in a chaotic world. In it, I teach a spiritual practice of prayer, a short breath prayer that I wrote, that I've been praying for the last 5 years, and it has been so helpful to me as I face the anxiety and uncertainty of our time, and I want to share it with you. So subscribe to my newsletter, get that book at www.marcoptin.com. Until next time, remember, in this one present moment, you are loved, you are known, and you are not alone.